the reason why you might play Sig and Ashe here, again, I don't know if they're expecting a specific enemy comp, but don't really care about that too much. Thinking more about the ways that Fusion and Gladiators are fighting for map control, right? Like with these comps, yes, we are putting heals on the flankers while the flankers fight for the flanks. Yes, we are doing that. But then also when you have a map like this, where you have like these kind of really kind of long angles and stuff, then a Sig and an Ashe can actually do a very good job contesting them. Yeah, very good job contesting, right? So Sig and Ashe, it's not really a tremendously different comp, right? It's just that on a map like this where we have these kind of long sight lines, we don't have kind of cheeky flank routes, you know, where a tracer can get past unnoticed, a ball can get past unnoticed, right? So especially for the first rollout, when you know there's no enemies behind you, this comp can actually work really well. Yeah. So like it's a nice little rollout comp. Pretty good. Also, Shockwave, not comfortable on Sombra, as far as I know. Anyway, like we never see him play Sombra, even when he's in on these Koth rounds. So obviously Fusion don't want to play the mirror versus Gladiators, which is the reason why they've got Shockwave in, and we're gonna see how it goes for them. Obviously, what this does mean for us is that in terms of the way Fusion want to play, their flankers aren't really going to be able to contest. Yeah, they can slowly kind of fight in the flank, slowly give ground, but they're not really going to be able to take a whole lot because they have no Sombra, right? Obviously, the Ashe can help with that though. So instead of having a Sombra kind of going behind, making a distraction, helping in these duels for the flank, again, by these duels, we're talking about these three flankers and these three flankers kind of fighting each other for the space, trying to control as much of the map as they can. Typically, we are used to seeing the Sombra do that, but obviously the Ashe does it as well. But the Ashe does it by spamming range, by holding angles, yeah? Any little bits of damage you can get onto Sombras as they pop up, any single body shot onto a Tracer is going to be enough to force that Tracer back so that our team can take the space, right? And the damage on the ball as he's kind of coming in early is also critical, yeah? Any kind of orb priority or packs that we can force onto that ball instead of the DPS is going to mean a lot when our Tracer and our ball actually start to kind of fight, right? So Ashe does need to be kind of making sure she's going forward doing the damage. So we did talk about this already, and kind of my main gripe is the way that we want to see Shockwave play in this comp, right? In that when we're playing the Ashe, we need to understand that we're not going to be in this position where we're kind of posted up, free sight lines, spamming away all the time, right? We can see already Gladiators rotate left side to avoid this Ashe LOS. Yeah, we see that's happened already, right? So what do we need to do? We need to keep Shockwave in an aggressive position. We do not want Shockwave to rotate into a place like this one over here that is safe. Yeah, because the Ashe in this comp, she's more of a threat than she is like an actual. Than she is actually going to do anything, right? Because she's such a threat, enemy team's going to hide, right? And also, if she takes an aggressive angle, like this one here, where Shockwave was playing, it's going to force a response from the enemy team. Yeah, obviously that first response is hiding, which is good, because then it means our DPS can start taking the angles, right? The second response is going to force enemy aggressive resources. And what are we talking here? We're talking blinks, we're talking, you know, Sombra popping up out of invis, you know, Diva flying over, ball slamming in, that type of stuff. It's going to force those into a position of our choosing, right? Because if our Ashe takes an aggressive angle over here, wherever, right? Because it's an aggressive angle, the enemy team have to respond to that. They are, at some point, going to have to deal with it, right? They won't really be in a position to kind of try and go past her, go into the supports, because this Ashe is such a threat, yeah? So even though the Ashe isn't really going to kind of carry the fight, she can be enough of a threat to force a dive in this position, right? We can think if this Ashe was a Bastion instead, it would be the same concept. A Bastion over here would force an enemy response. Obviously, Bastion's a little bit different because he's so stationary and we can just kind of poke him out and shoot him. But that's the same type of thing here, right? Shockwave needs to understand that all he really is a threat. He's a bait. If we're forcing Gladiator's dive in this position, the rest of the team can peel for it. And again, that's why we have the spacing between Shockwave and the backline. Because if Shockwave's getting dived, our backline can focus purely both on peeling for Shockwave and, especially for our Zen, doing the DPS, right? If our Zen isn't getting caught in that dive because we're forcing the dive onto the Ashe, then obviously our Zen can just kind of shoot away, clear the targets, clear them super quick. And then once those targets are cleared, you know, Trace has gone away, no recall, Sombra's translocated out, Balls had to go back because he's, you know, 1 HP. Then our team has all the freedom to kind of push forward, take the space, yeah? Push onto the enemy supports maybe, right? Or at least just take an angle so that they can maybe stage a dive onto the enemy sports in like 10-15 seconds time. Like, that's what Fusion need to do, yeah? But it isn't what we see this fight. It's also fine if Shockwave dies to those engages too. Again, it's a resource game, yeah? We're not thinking about, oh, you know, we have one person here, two people here, whatever. We're just thinking about the resources, right? Sometimes thinking about the game in terms of a man advantage can be a useful shorthand for those resources, but it's not a very accurate way of describing the game, at least in kind of modern Overwatch, yeah? So again, the gripe I have here is very simply, Shockwave moving over to the team, absolutely no reason to take this angle, yeah? He needs to be here. He needs to be shooting this ball, stopping this ball from coming out. He needs to be putting pressure on this diva, right? He needs to be taking, you know, pressure from the backline too, right? This sombra over here, when she comes out, she needs to think, oh, there's an ashe there. Start calling to the ashe. She's going to try and set up for the ashe, right? The ball's thinking, wow, how can I set up a dive onto this ashe? Because we've got to clear her, yeah? Oh, okay, I remembered what the other thing I was going to say was, right? Is that, obviously, when we look at Gladiators comp, Gladiators, okay, maybe not on this map, but maybe they still do. They theoretically have that thing that we call the passive advantage, right? Because if they play slow enough, they have the most flank control. So the, you know, the ashe, so the sombra, the tracer can take the flanks with the support of the backline. You know, ball can help them too. Very, very simple, right? So theoretically, if the fight goes on for long enough, they can slowly take those positions. They can slowly set up for really nice engage. They can slowly maybe even poke out the ashe, force her back with the team. And then once they're in a position where they have some flank control, because they have the advantage in the flankers in terms of numbers, force these players back, then they can stage a really nice dive, clean up the fight, so on and so on, right? Very, very simple Briggs Den stuff. Now, what ashe can do, even though theoretically they're playing versus a team that can do that if they're given the time, ashe can take away the time they need to do that. Because if ashe goes on an aggressive enough angle, even though it might not be a fantastic angle for the ashe, it can force an engage from Gladiators before Gladiators have set up the perfect engage, before that passive advantage that we're talking about has become so much of an advantage that Fusion are unable to overcome it, right? Yes, theoretically, Gladiators, if given enough time, can go around the whole map, get all the positions, stage a perfect dive onto Fusion, right? But if our ashe plays a super aggressive position, again, don't really care where it is, as long as it's forcing a response from Gladiators, then Gladiators are forced to engage, they're forced to fight, before they have the requisite angles to make it a really nice, clean fight, right? But yeah, so I hope that makes sense, right? Yeah, we see a really nice boop from Muse anyway, but again, the main issue here is our ashe is grouped up with the team. Why? To poke the backline? Who cares, right? Gladiators don't care about the ashe. If the ashe is grouped up with the team, the damage that ashe does a main, she's not going to get free picks spamming this way. It's not going to happen, right? These are Overwatch League players. They're not going to over-peak an ashe. Our Zen and our ashe cannot be peaking the same angle when we're playing the type of comp that needs to play around map control, yeah? If our ashe was here instead, we can shoot this ball if he comes across, shoot the tracer if he comes across. More likely, the ball and tracer would have gone onto the ashe, which means our ball, our tracer, are then free to kind of respond to that, try and peel for the ashe, get the damage on the ball, push the ball out, right? So hopefully we can understand how different those two situations are. One where the ashe is hiding at the back, not controlling space. One where the ashe is both controlling space and forcing enemy resources onto her, so that the rest of the team is free to kind of peel for her, yeah? Or free to trade out on the attention that the ashe is forced onto her, right? And we see that quite a lot with these balls and comps, where we have one hero that's forcing a kind of overcommitment of resources from the enemy team. You know, that hero shouldn't really warrant so many resources being put onto them. But because they're taking an aggressive angle, because they're playing in a certain way, that means the enemy team have to kind of go all in on killing them. Even though that initial player dies, even if Shockwave was going to die to this type of dive, because the enemy team have to commit so much in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, it means that obviously rest of Fusion are in a position to kind of trade out on that, right? But yeah, we see Shockwave group up the team. Because he groups up with the team, Birdring's behind, Kevster's behind, Muse is in position for a dive. We see the whole team get caught by this pile driver, right? Doomed, yeah. Again, it's mostly because Sombra's going to do a whole lot more in those skirmishes for map control. Echo doesn't really excel in these little fights on the flank versus Tracers versus Sombras. She is kind of a very cooldown oriented hero, right? She needs to go in, use the fly, use the right clicks, you know, the stickies, use the focusing beam, then back out, right? Whereas because Tracer and Sombra, yeah, okay, cooldown focused heroes too, Sombra especially because she's got to Transicate out, they put on a bit more kind of constant pressure, yeah? Because even when Sombra's not fighting, the threat of having a Sombra on the enemy team means that these players, they're scared of taking too wide an angle. Because if they do, Sombra's going to come up behind them, scout it, and then the rest of the team's going to push in, punish that player, right? So Echo doesn't really do a whole lot to help us skirmish for map control, which means kind of similar to when they're playing the Ashe, Fusion need to find a way of going in, forcing point like they're doing, and forcing gladiators to commit to a fight before their kind of extra angle control that the three flankers give them, before that kind of becomes apparent, right? Because if we're forcing gladiators into these kind of early fights before they can take enough space, then our Echo can actually get value because she's going to have more players in front of her, more tanks contesting point, maybe Ball's going to come in and dive these players, in which case our Echo can kind of just try and delete the ball, right? So that's the way Fusion have got to play. They are kind of doing it this fight by contesting point. I don't really remember what goes wrong here. We get a really nice right click from Lam. Nice trance as well. But we still see Fusion lose. And again, like whenever we see these types of situations, again, it's like we want to understand that it's not really to do with like a man advantage. It's not really to do with like how many picks you have, so on, so on. It's to do with kind of the angles that you have and the resources that you have. Those are kind of the main things, right? Like, yes, we get the right click, but even though the enemy team don't have a Zen, they have Tracer on the angle. They have Sombra about to be on the angle. They have the Ball in a position to push, D.Va in a position to push, right? And they've done enough poke during this fight, mostly because the Echo is so demanding in terms of resources, yeah? That, like, whole team's super low. Whole team is also committing kind of a little bit too far forward. So we're not in a fantastic position, yeah? And yes, you know, we have the chance to get the D-Max, so on. Really nice pulse from Kevster. Again, I don't really care too much about kind of what's going on here. I want to skip through, look at the more interesting fights. Obviously, Briggs and Comp has the support ults we're looking to push, yeah? Very, very simple. We're looking to push whenever you have the support ults, especially when you know the enemy team doesn't have any of theirs. We have a very clear solution here. And again, solution means we have some angles, we have some ultimates, and we have proximity too. So our Briggs N kind of past this position, they're close enough to push into the backline. So that's what we need. We need the angles, we need the ults, and we need the proximity to the enemy backline. When we talk about needing the ults, that also means that we never commit to an aggressive position until we have those ults, right? So we can imagine that because of looking at Fusion's team, they're not really going to commit too hard. They're going to play slow. They're going to skirmish. They're not really going to commit to anything because they don't have any ults, right? Once they do have the ults, they'll take more kind of aggressive positions of commitment, just because if they need the ults, once they get into those positions, then they actually have them, right? Whereas if this Ball was going super deep, it's like trying to slam on Zen, if this Tracer was going super deep, if these supports especially were kind of pushing in, because the team has no ults, they wouldn't be able to respond to the enemy team coming in or respond to the enemy team committing resources. So Fusion's mindset in this situation is going to be playing very slowly. You know, they're just going to be kind of chilling at the back. They're going to be taking these positions they can disengage from, right? Until they have the ults that let them kind of commit past this area. Yeah, sorry, past this line, right? Now, obviously, gladiators know this, which is the reason why we see them play so aggressively in this fight. Yeah. And again, it's not just about pure aggression. It's about understanding that they have a solution in this moment. They have the advantage in terms of flankers, which is going to allow them to push out this Echo, just because this Echo doesn't really excel, obviously, in this situation. If she's going to fight here, she needs a lot of resources, a lot of help. I'd maybe even say these supports are like a little bit too far forward, like this whole backline unit is maybe a little bit too far forward. We might actually want to skirmish a little bit further back, kind of poke this way, so we can play slower and force enemy ults from a longer distance. Might be quite useful, right? But again, looking at this mostly from Gladiator's perspective, they know they have the advantage in terms of the flank. They know they can get the angle. They also know that because Fusion aren't going to play aggressively until they get the ults, you know, these flankers, Birdring, Kevster, Muse, kind of have the freedom to set up whatever the fight they want, right? You know, this, Muse here has a very easy time getting a slam on the backline in a second, as we're going to see. Yeah. But looking at the backline quickly, Shu skewed. We see them pushing forward. Again, we talked about it yesterday, but we see before they push in, Shu's orbing his Brigida, so he doesn't have to turn around and look for her. He's pushing all the way in. Again, he's not using trance as a reaction to the enemy team coming in. He's pushing in aggressively, getting a bit of damage, getting a discord on the enemy Zen, and then using trance to respond to all the resources the enemy team are turning around and putting on him, right? I know we talked about this yesterday, but we're just kind of looking at it quickly from overhead, right? So very, very good fight from Gladiators. Again, it's because they understood they had a solution. Most of it's to do with the ults, right? But we're looking not at, oh, they had ult advantage, so they won. They're looking at the way that they play when they have an ult advantage. They know the enemy team aren't going to commit, which means that their flankers have freedom to play aggressively. They also know the enemy team have echo, so their flankers are very free to play aggressively. And because the supports know that, and the supports know that they have their own ults to kind of save themselves, they're very, very happy walking all the way through, getting a discord as Muse comes in with a slam. So again, very happy with that, right? We just saw a little fight in the spawn, don't really care about that, just kind of enemy team are coming out, we staged for an early dive. Like, it's not, there is obviously stuff there to talk about, it's not really something I want to go through. The only other fight I think I'll look at for this map before we start skipping through, because again, I kind of want to keep this one going quick, because we have talked about some of this before, is this one here, right? And this is, obviously, last fight we saw the way that Gladiators were playing when they had a solution, yeah, because they had the angle control, and they had the ult advantage that let them push in and fight. This situation, they don't have a solution because the enemy team are the ones with the ult advantage. Yeah, the only thing we've got here is a rally, and we're actually very far away from all our other ults. What this means is for us to have a solution, instead of kind of playing heavily around the ults, we have to play heavily around the angles, right? Because again, we're seeing that solution as a mix of those three things: the angles, the ultimates, and the proximity of the backline. Yeah. So what we're seeing in this fight here is we're seeing Fusion play aggressively initially to make space. So we've already seen the mines dropped on point. That's the first ult. We're seeing the Echo play aggressively with the knowledge that she can then use her copy once she kind of gets scouted. And, oh sorry, once she kind of starts to get dealt with, yeah? And this position that she's taking, yeah, it seems like a super aggressive position, but it's also forcing enemy attention towards her, right? That attention on the Echo is going to mean the rest of the team can clear the space quite easy, right? So this is the way that Fusion are taking space. Obviously, if they had more time, they might want to play a bit slower, use the Zen LOS to clear a bit of space, but they don't really have that time because Gladiators are about to win the map, right? Which is why we see them play so aggressively with the ultimates. We also talked about how, because they have the Echo instead of the Sombra, they can't really play that super slow playstyle. They have to try and force fights a little bit more by going forward with ults, by contesting point, yeah? So this is why we see the Echo here. But the kind of point I'm trying to make is that when we're seeing Fusion kind of peak in terms of ultimates, they're really peaking in uptime, right? That's when we're seeing Gladiators back up. Because, again, the backline especially, they know they have no angles at that point, so they can't fight, right? Yeah, we are seeing these players kind of skirmish on the flanks, but we're not really seeing any real commitment. Because to see a real commitment from Gladiators, we would have to see the backline push in, yeah? So what we're instead seeing is the backline back up, allow the enemy team to put pressure on point, start capping point. Obviously, we're seeing space contested a little bit. You've still got a bit of rally, so might as well contest it a little bit, but we're not really going to see space commit to it. Yeah. What we're instead going to see is the focus on making sure that the enemy flankers, again, Bull, Echo, Tracer, are forced back to the team. Right? That's what we're going to see the focus on. We see it with the Discord. We see Shu looking around all the time. Again, Brig finds the Tracer. Echo coming in with the ult from the copy, which is why we're still seeing, especially the backline from Gladiators kind of play passive. No one's really in a position to commit it, right? All we're seeing is this kind of slower skirmish, using the heals, using the LOS of the Zen. We're not seeing positions of commitment from Gladiators, right? Yes, we're seeing Birdring in this position, but look at the position he's taking. He's using these pillars slowly. He's blocking LOS to the enemy backline because he doesn't want to fight the enemy backline. The only thing he wants to fight is the enemy flankers. He's clearing the space so that his team can play more aggressively, right? That's what we're seeing. We're seeing him take a position to clear the Echo. Space is doing exactly the same. He's using the statue here to LOS the backline while he focuses the Echo, right? Shu doing exactly the same from this angle, right? He's using these pillars here, and obviously this kind of hallway, he's zoning it out himself. But he's also using these pillars to block LOS to the enemy backline while he focuses the Echo. Yeah? And in terms of the Tracer, the same thing's happening. In terms of the Wrecking Ball, I think you already got forced out before, but you see the point I'm trying to make, right? Gladiators are using this time to clear the enemy flankers. Once the enemy flankers are cleared, that's when we'll see gladiators set up to take a dive onto the enemy team. Yeah? So that's what we're seeing in terms of the Brig's End. Again, this is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing Shu drop to point. He's discording these players on point. Now that the Echo's been forced back, now the Trace has been forced back, the next player that's kind of sticking out the most on Fusion are the tanks. So that's where we see the resources go. Yeah? Obviously, Fusion end up losing to the C9 here. The other thing to say as well is that after these DPS have been forced out, after that kind of initial space has been made, because we had the flank from Kevster, we saw him go all the way this way, it meant that we did have a solution, right? Which is the reason why we see Kevster commit. He's already got the kill on Carpe, and we see Muse commit as well, right? So when they didn't have a solution, we saw these players playing very passively, working only to control the flanks. And again, Kevster flanking this way is also controlling the flank because it means that there's no enemies in this area, right? But then as soon as we have that solution, because Kevster's taken this flank, we see Muse go forward and commit, right? And again, they managed to get the kill. I don't know if they're going to kill the supports, but either way, it's creating a big distraction in the backline, while the backline unit is then clearing these players that are split. So it's a very, very clean Brig's End default from Gladiators here. We're very, very happy with this, right? Both teams playing the monkey comps into each other. Obviously, we've got the Echo from Fusion on the defense. Echo much more suited to these monkey comps, yeah, because we're talking about the way that she has that. She has the commitment with the cooldowns, right? She's going in with the fly, with the stickies, with the beam, which means that she has very good cooldowns to match with her monkey, right? When her monkey dives in, she can fly up, throw the cooldowns, maybe hard commit with the monkey if she does enough damage. Similarly, if an enemy monkey's coming in, her cooldowns are fantastic versus him, right? Because either she's in a position, let's say she's up where the Tracer is right now, enemy monkey kind of comes barreling through the gate, jumps all the way in, then our Echo's in a great position to kind of fly over the top and kill like the enemy sports as they try and kind of follow through and run underneath, right? Echo's a fantastic hero for that. The other situation is obviously enemy monkey comes in, dives quite close, dives in a place where the Echo is in a nice position to shoot him. In that case, Echo is one of the best heroes in the team, one of the best heroes in the game at clearing that monkey, right? Because she can break his shield really quick, and then as soon as he starts taking damage, the focusing beam will knock him out straight away, even if he's coming in with nano or primal. And that's the critical part, right? Is that whenever we see these monkeys coming in with nano and primal, very, very difficult to find a way to clear them. But if we have an Echo in the midst, right, it gives us a hero that could either trade very efficiently on the enemy backline or clear that nanoing monkey, or clear that nanoed monkey, clear that primaling monkey, because we have so much DPS, especially with the focusing beam, right? So Echo obviously much better suited to these monkey comps, especially on a map like Anubis. Yeah. So can't really remember what happens here. The thing that we're looking at really from Gladiators, they're going to be playing slow. The way that they're going to be brawling is, well, I mean, they're going to be brawling instead of diving, right? Because there's no real need for this monkey to jump in. All this monkey wants to do is walk forward, drop his bubble. He's going to get some zaps on like the enemy tanks if they're playing main. He's not really going to take any risks because as the attacking team, you don't actually need to when you're playing this monkey comp. Your only kind of real focus for this first fight is going to be farming the nano, right? Which is why we see him walking like this. We're not seeing him dive. Again, if we just focus on Muse, the way Muse walked in, he's walking in. He's kind of baiting, trying not to commit resources too early. I think he might actually jump up on the DPS here. Again, we want to make sure we're clearing these players wherever we can. And that type of dive is not really a risky one for Muse, yeah? He takes a bunch of damage, but that's acceptable amounts of damage, right? Because again, it just means that we're turning it into nano charge and we see Shu's already on 50%. So that's the type of skirmish we're going to do on the attack from Gladiator's perspective. Obviously, from Fusion's perspective, they do want to keep an eye out for chances to kind of disrupt that where they can. I don't know if their team really has options to do that right now. Again, they don't have a Sombra to get hacks, which can make it kind of awkward. But because they have the Echo, it means they're not even really that afraid when the Nano comes in. Yeah, as long as our backline of Alarm and Funny Astra are kind of backing up, not immediately kind of getting eviscerated by the Nano Monkey, then our Echo should be able to do some work. Either she's going to be able to get into a position to trade on the backline, or in a position to deal with the monkey when the monkey comes in, right? So Fusion are actually in a fine position. Where they struggle is Bertrand gets behind, Shockwave gets hacked. Do we care about it enough to go and find like why Shockwave gets hacked? I'm not sure. Where actually is he? Birdring gets a really nice position over here. This one's good. I think maybe my issue is that Mano is jumping up top. Is my problem. It's not terrible, I suppose. I think it's fine. Do we know Birdring's here? No. I think it's this here. Oh, he just fucked up. He misses. Okay, never mind. He misses this high ground here. We don't even want our Echo to be on this high ground initially. Yeah, we would rather that she was in a position like this one, where she can kind of LOS, where she can break the bubble here. We don't want her. We don't want our Echo in the kind of first position of commitment on these types of defense rounds on Anubis, right? Because this isn't an easy position to peel for her from, because she's not on an angle, right? If I'm trying to think of the best way to describe that. It's kind of like we can imagine like a Numbani defense, right? So let's say this is Numbani defense. Where it looks like Numbani defense? Maybe kind of like this area here. Let's say that like this is like the high ground of Numbani, and then like the doorway's like here, and now Anna's playing kind of where she is over here on the other high ground, right? In that type of situation, the Echo can play kind of above, like here, shooting the players as they come out of the doorway, right? And that's kind of fine on Numbani, right? Because it's kind of is at a separate angle. We have this kind of nice little triangle going on, which means that if the enemy team want to come out and commit loads of resources onto the Echo, is kind of very good to peel for her, because the enemy team will be putting themselves, they'll be exposing themselves to the enemy, they'll be exposing their kind of backs to our team while they're pushing onto the Echo, right? So that's kind of fine in that situation. This situation's a little bit different, right? Because we have this very kind of linear fight going on, where if our Echo plays up top, she's taking all the pressure from the monkey, all the pressure from the diva, and they don't have to commit anything. So it's kind of better if we see her playing a little bit further back. Obviously, it might have been fine if Shockwave had actually made it up there, but then what would we have seen? We'd just seen the monkey jump up, diva jump up, Shockwave gets knocked off anyway, still gets hacked, right? So we'd rather see Shockwave playing a little bit more passive and reserving his cooldowns and stuff for that critical moment when the monkeys come in and start trading, or when the monkeys kind of just walk into each other in main and start brawling. That's what we want Shockwave to save his cooldowns for, because he didn't do it in this situation. It exposed him to the hack, yeah? Again, if he's playing back here, he's also in a position to kind of deny the Sombra hacks, because he can see where she is. He's like, if he's playing here, because he's literally got his back to a wall, the Sombra can't come up behind him, so he can always see the Sombra. Because again, a very common position for Sombra is this one here, or maybe this one up here behind the pillar, where they can put a hack threat on any of Shockwave's team, kind of playing main, playing down here, playing up top, playing these corners, right? So having an Echo over here is a really good way of denying those Sombra hacks when she kind of comes out here and starts to uncloak, right? What are we looking at here? We're looking at the way that gladiators take space. Obviously, we did talk about this a little bit when we talked about the shoe VOD, right? So I'm not going to go over this too much. But again, the way we can think about it is we're seeing these kind of two separate spaces for the defenders to play in. We have this first initial space where we have this kind of high ground here. We have kind of this position for EQO to play in, kind of quite close to the enemy team, right? In this first space. Now, gladiators obviously want to get into this position where they're kind of on point, start fighting. To do that, they're going to have to clear both these spaces. It seems like they understand this first space pretty well, because what do we see? We see Shu playing quite far back. We see the brig playing quite far back as well. If an engage came in from this yellow area, right? Very, very easy for our supports to kind of back up, stabilize, survive that engage. Yeah, very, very easy to do that, right? But what we kind of see the mistake is this kind of blue area, right? They don't really understand that an engage is very likely to actually come from this area instead, these types of positions, right? Again, this one's kind of in that little room, yeah? That's where an engage is actually very likely to come from, because it's actually quite easy to clear these front spaces. So this is kind of, this secondary position is where a lot of the dives are going to come from, right? Gladiators don't really seem to understand that too much, and we see that with the way that the backline plays. But obviously, just before this, what do we see? We saw gladiators actually doing a very good job of clearing that kind of opening yellow space, yeah? Because they're flying up, they contest a monkey, contest an echo. We see some Ana shots coming towards the EQO here, so EQO knows he's under threat. Very good way of clearing that space. Yeah, we see Birdring go behind, do the scouting, so on and so on. So again, very happy with this. We're diving up, we're not really committing anything, we're pocketing the monkey from choke, we're shooting the tracer, you know, we're clearing that opening space. Obviously Fusion, they're not crazy about holding that opening space because they didn't have the ults that enabled them to do it. Again, remember, we're always talking about the solution, right? You need the angles again, for the Fusion's comp on this map, it's kind of difficult to get really good angles. This tracer position here, though, could theoretically be considered an angle, right? Because you can come in like this, right? So you need the angles. You also need the kind of proximity of the heroes that you actually want going in. But most importantly, you need the ultimates, right? Because Fusion were like 90% to Nano. They're not really beholden to having a fight in this area or starting a fight from this area, right? Which is why we see them back up. Then the problem kind of comes where we see the Nano on Muse as the rest of the team pushes in. Again, in terms of these Nanos on Monkey, it's very, very simple, right? The Monkey's going to jump in. He's probably going to be able to build Primal off this pretty easily. So it's basically a Nano Primal. He's going to go in. He's going to get on the back line. We're probably going to expect the Diva to come back as well. Sorry, the enemy Diva to come back and try and peel for them. And then we're seeing these three heroes in the back line fight our Monkey for what, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, maybe a little bit longer because he's got Primal. Now, the rest of the team has got to use that time very wisely because you're not really going to get much of a time window without the Nano, without the Primal. They've got to use that time to clear these players, yeah? Obviously, at the same time, Fusion are going to be starting their own engage. We see they have their own Nano. We see the Echo's in a position to dive. We see the Tracer's got Pulse Bomb on the flank, right? So really, at this point, we're kind of having a race, right? Who can clear the enemy Monkey first? Yeah. If Fusion are the first team to clear the Monkey, then their supports are going to retake the angle, pocket their team as their team's fighting. Their team's going to win, right? Or at least force the enemy team back. Whereas if Gladiators are the one to clear the Monkey first, and they force out Mano while Muse is still kind of distracting the supports, distracting the enemy Diva, then their team will be able to clear these players very easily because there's no healing. Again, in terms of if we clear the Monkey, Breaker's Bubble, whatever, if we can do that first, Tracer's going to have to recall, Echo's going to run out of cooldowns, maybe she's going to die, at least she's going to have to leave, right? Monkey's either going to die or jump out, right? So it's kind of a race between who can clear the enemy Monkey first. Obviously in this situation, we see Muse has Primal, so theoretically Muse should be able to kind of buy enough time, right? What we'd like to see from Gladiators is kind of complete focus. Again, Kevster doesn't have Pulse Bomb yet, so I don't really want to see Kevster going for the trade. Yeah, okay, theoretically from this position he could get behind, could get in a position to maybe kind of delete these supports at the same time as the dive comes in, but I would almost rather see Kevster focus on making sure these players are cleared, right? So if he blinks under here, focuses the Echo, that's good, right? That's what we want to see. Can't actually remember what happens here. I think this is when Shu just runs through the choke by himself. And like when talking about this initially, it's like, okay, there must be a reason why he's doing this. Like there must be some reason why a professional player is playing like this. And the only thing that I can really think of is that when an Ana changes position aggressively, like a microseconds before a dive comes in, it can really mess up the enemy dive. But I don't think this is one of those situations because there's nothing stopping Shu from just playing kind of at the gate, allowing his Brig and especially his Diva to open the choke first with kind of Birdring's going to be here any second. Kevster could also be kind of here, fighting here, whatever, right? If Shu's a little bit further back, kind of where the Brig is, then it's very easy to survive this dive. All you do is you back up a little bit. You don't get hit, you don't get killed by the Echo, because again, if you're playing further back, it's very easy for Shu, sorry, not Shu, it's very easy for Space to eat the Pulse Bomb. Very easy for Space to eat the stickies from the Echo, right? Also much easier to hit the sleeps and stuff on the Monkey if you're not right inside the enemy team when the Nano comes in, right? So it would be much easier for Shu if he was playing further back, right? The first time I watched this, I wasn't really sure if there was like some really funky reason why he was doing this, but I feel like it's just an imp, right? And we'll see from Fusion's perspective, when they're attacking, they play it completely differently, and they clear the enemy Monkey very, very quickly, right? The only thing on Gladiator's mind right now, it should be clearing the Monkey when it comes in, clearing the Tracer, clearing the Sombra, but they're not focusing on that, right? And because they're not focusing on that, they're not setting up for it correctly, yeah? So instead what we see is, we see Shu take pressure. He's forced to run this way because of the Nano, because of the Pulse Bomb. But his mistake was standing here when the Nano actually came in the first place. We're not in a position to peel for him. Bear in mind as well, we've used all our armor packs, taken the early space, so we have no armor packs for Shu at this point either, right? We're seeing a kind of very poor synergy between the trio, yeah? These three players in the backline not working well enough together during this push, right? Again, I don't know whose fault it really is without being in comms. Probably most likely to be Shu's fault for running straight in. But again, if Skewed needs time to regen armor packs before Shu walks in, then that needs to be communicated, that type of stuff, right? These three players, all three of them are responsible for what happens to the Ana, yeah? So they've got to make sure they're working together, talking with each other outside of matches, making sure that they're organizing the way that they're walking through chokes like this, right? We see a very, very messy example here. which is the reason why we see Shu die, right? And because Shu's dead, it means it doesn't even matter that we get the kills on the brig. We get the kill on the Ana as well, but it doesn't matter, yeah, because our Ana's already dead. Okay, so we're in a nice position here. Had a little skirmish. We're about to push in again. We have another nano. Can't actually remember this fight. Kind of walking in, kind of skirmishing. Okay, we get a really nice hack from Birdring. And again, this is the kind of thing we're looking for. When the enemy team are playing in this yellow area, and what did we see? We saw Shockwave playing kind of a little bit far forward. Gladiators are actually doing a very good job in clearing that space, right? Because we see Birdring get to a position like this one. He's got the hack threat, finds the hack. Same time the rest of the team's pushing in. Perfect, right? That's exactly what we're looking for. How can Fusion play against that? It's kind of difficult. They just got to kind of make sure they're overlapping their LOS. So if our Echo's playing here, there's got to be some sort of player over here, or maybe a Tracer up here, right? Like, we got to make sure we're kind of overlapping our LOS, so our Sombra can't get a free hack on one of us, right? Instead, we saw Shockwave over here by himself. We saw Tracer over here, Monkey over here, Diva over here. No one's in a position where they're overlapping their lines of sight with the Echo, so we have no chance to stop the hack when it comes through, right? We're also not close enough to really kind of matrix the Echo. We do get a bit of matrix on the Echo, but like, that's the kind of main point, right? Like, we leave this route open, but then we put our Echo on a kind of vulnerable position here. Yeah, we need someone in this area. I mean, even back here is fine, or like up here, like I don't really care where, as long as we're overlapping our LOS a little bit. No player is kind of being left on their own playing defense versus a Sombra. Yeah. Do we get the kill? I don't think we do, but even though we don't, it still allows us to take that opening. Sorry, I did it in yellow before, didn't we? That opening yellow space, it allows us to take it very easily, right? Because we're getting through, because we're getting the hacks, right? Now, I think this is again where we see the issue with the blue space, right? In that, there's not really anything we can really say about this. I don't really care for going too in depth on like pulse bombs and stuff, but we see Shu get pulse bombed in the back, right? We didn't know where the Tracer was when we started pushing, and that should have rung some alarm bells, right? Shu, space, skewed. One of these players should have been asking, where is the Tracer, right? They can say it to themselves, they can say it aloud, doesn't really matter. But we should have been looking for the Tracer. We should have known that we haven't seen her yet. We haven't seen her. We don't know where she is, right? She hasn't been scouted. We know she's got pulse bomb, so we've got to be on the lookout for her, right? Again, I don't really care about this situation too much, but it's just another situation where we see Gladiators, they're bleeding Shu as they're trying to push point. They're doing a really great job clearing that initial yellow space, but once it gets to the blue space, they're kind of getting a little bit greedy and trying to close the fight straight away. Whereas they should know that this blue space, this kind of secondary space, is where the enemy team are going to kind of make their main attack from, right? We see a kind of similar situation here where, because they have rally, they try and run straight through, right? They have rally here, they're trying to run straight through. And we see these kind of dives come in. I think we see a nano on to Mano in a second, right? Like, okay, this is still a way of clearing this yellow space, this opening space, right? If we don't want to kind of spend 20 seconds using our LOS, using our angles, slowly clearing these players, we can cheat, right? We can cheat. And basically that means using the ults, right? In this case, it's the rally. So this is a great way to clear this space. Again, we've cleared it enough for our monkey to walk in and dive from this position. He's going to dive from this position. Doesn't have nano, but it does have primal. How long is he going to be able to buy us for the enemy supports? He's going to be able to buy us maybe, 6-7 seconds of these enemy supports being zoned out, right? Which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. In the meantime, what are we looking at? We're looking at a rallied Ana, a rallied brig, even rallied Sombra, rallied Tracer, maybe not. But we have the rally, which means we have the potential to clear these players, clear these flankers. Again, we're probably expecting the Diva to go this way, but if she joined the fight here, we could also clear her, yeah, because we have the rally. Now, the problem that we see here is that we don't see that mindset for Gladiators. We see them try and run straight to point. We don't see them focus on clearing the space, right? We have our Sombra in this area. Again, I don't really care about Burrowdring's POV. I'm not going to go through it. But we have Sombra in this area getting pressured while we see our Brig, our Ana, kind of just try and run straight to point, right? We see, again, we haven't seen it just yet, but we're about to see it here. And I know we looked at it yesterday. But if Shu's understanding that, like, at this stage of the fight, the only thing they care about is clearing that space while they have the kind of time window that the monkey buys them, right? Why on earth do we see him launching his cooldowns directly down main? Yeah? And like, he shouldn't be expecting to get these cooldowns going either, right? He shouldn't be expecting to hit them. Even if if he does hit them, maybe we see the kills from Muse, but we don't really care too much, right? We care more about the team playing the default. Because we don't see the team play the default, it takes us too long to clear this Echo, too long to clear this Monkey. Again, imagine if we had a nade to keep Shu alive, and maybe a sleep on the Monkey, maybe a sleep and a nade on the Monkey, right? Or just a nade onto our brig as she runs in to punch the Monkey in the face, that type of stuff, right? That's the way we'd want to use our cooldowns here. But instead, what do we see? We see Shu actually end up dying, right? Because the Tracer's still behind, the Monkey's still behind, and Shu has no cooldowns because the rest of the team, he also had no rally armor either when the team started going to point, because we saw Skew just kind of run straight in, yeah? Like, if Gladiators understand that their priority when Muse is making space is clearing this area here, then we wouldn't see that type of resource usage. We wouldn't see Skewed run straight to point and not give Xana any rally charge, right? We'd see them actually help their DPS clear these players. And again, Ana can do it by running into the Monkey, sleeping him, running onto the Tracer, forcing recall with nade, that type of stuff, right? Just nading yourself while you shoot the Monkey in the face, right? Like, you have the options if you have the cooldowns. But you didn't have the cooldowns because the team, again, once they get to this area here, it seems they're getting very, very impatient, very greedy. They want to close out the fight. That's not how you can afford to play in Monkey comps or in these Monkey mirrors, especially on a map like Anubis B. Yeah? Could this be a coaching issue? They seem to make the same mistake again and again. I mean, it's not like a coaching issue as in coaches have told them the wrong thing to do. That may well be the case, right? The coaches may well have told them the wrong thing to do, right? Because yes, in this comp, the Ana and the Brig, they want to run in, they want to close out the fight, but they can only do that once they have a solution, right? While the enemy team is still, while the enemy flankers, Monkey, Tracer, Echo, are still kind of engaging on them, still in this yellow area, our Ana Brig, they don't have a solution. They have nothing they can run in to kill, yeah? Because these players need to be dealt with first, right? So yes, Ana and Brig do want to push in, and if all their coaches have told them is, oh, you need to push in to close out the fight, then Ana and Brig are going to go for these types of plays. They're not going to understand what their solution actually is for this fight, right? And again, we talk about solutions instead of win conditions because they're a little bit more open-ended, right? Our solution is making a bit of space with the Monkey, then clearing this, right? That's our solution. To do that, we need an ult, maybe, a nano, a primal, and we need a little bit of angle control. We need our Sombra kind of getting in position to scout these players, our Tracer ready to run onto them, our Ana needs to have the cooldowns to kind of sleep the Monkeys, nade the Tracers, whatever, right? So if the coaches haven't said that to them, then yes, that would be a coaching issue. But even if the coaches have said that to them, and we're still seeing these players make kind of mentality-based errors by getting too greedy and running in, then yes, it is also a coaching issue, right? So it's not necessarily to say like, oh, the coaches are wrong, but teams have opportunities to fix these issues, right? And yeah, you might have some players that are really bad at responding to that type of feedback, but coaches should have opportunities to fix these types of issues, yeah? Especially as something as simple as pushing Anubis B, right? The map where your Monkey's diving in, making space, then you're clearing the backline, right? You're clearing the enemies in your backline when your Monkey's making space. It's such a simple concept, right? So simple that it should be automatic for the majority of Overwatch League players, yeah? Right, so what are we seeing from Fusion on Fusion's attack? Like, we're seeing both teams play the Echo Sombra. We're seeing both teams play the Echo Sombra. And again, what do we know? We know that, like, as the attacking team, theoretically, you're going to build Nano first. Gladiators, we do want them to be looking for chances to disrupt the enemy Nano cycle if they can, right? Very risky thing to do, especially on Anubis. Because on Anubis, you have, if you're playing on defense, you don't have a way of getting through the choke, right? If you had a way of getting through the choke, maybe you had like a safe way of kind of hiding your Sombra behind or something, then maybe you could disrupt the enemy Nano cycle, by pushing in, taking a fight before the enemy team build the first Nano. But usually when you're playing Monkey Mirrors, it's not as much of a risk, so you don't really need to find a way to disrupt it. Sorry, okay. But we're fine here, we don't really care too much. We're seeing Monkeys not really commit too much, we're just kind of walking in, fighting a little bit, trying to farm the Nano. Not really seeing any real commitment, right? And again, like, the reason why Brig isn't getting caught by the dive, the reason why Ana, when that Monkey came in, she was all the way down the bottom of these stairs, is because she's understanding the timing of when the Monkey's coming in. This comp, hugely reliant on the Monkey cooldowns. If the Monkey doesn't have bubble, they can't fight, right? So when the monkey doesn't have bubble, we see Shu walk forward. We see Shu look for nades. You know, we see the sombra take a more aggressive angle, so on and so on. But when the monkey has bubble, we see this team kind of back up a tiny bit, make sure they're ready for that kind of monkey dive to come in, right? And again, the quicker we break the bubble, the quicker we clear the monkey, the more efficiently we're going to trade our ultimates, right? Yeah. I like that Kevster goes for this little duel. And again, because he's just seen the enemy monkey back out, he knows he has the freedom to commit his cooldown to go in and try and fight the enemy echo. Yeah. So it's good for Kevster there. The kind of issue that we see, so we see, what's he called? EQO come up on this flank and get the hack onto space. Again, I don't really know too much. Someone should be keeping an eye on this area. It's not the end of the world. You're either getting hacked, but just previously, I think we just see Shu kind of whiff both his cooldowns down main. This is the type of thing that we want to see him do, like kind of the second after Monkey uses bubble, right? So again, Monkey comes in now. If we found a chance to nade like now would be a perfect time to do it, because it gives our team a chance to kind of chase the monkey while he has no cooldowns, kind of start fighting, right? But instead, because we see him wait too long, then he goes for a nade now, not even onto the enemy monkey, because we don't really care. A nade on the Ana, we don't have a solution on the Ana, so we can't even push it. Nade on the Sombra, okay, it's nice to delay the Sombra flank, right? But again, it's not really critical. And it's kind of a risky nade. Again, most of the reason it's a risky nade is because the monkey's bubble has been down for a good like 6 seconds, yeah? Which means that the monkey's going to be able to take a second, take a dive, push forward with his bubble miles before Shu gets this nade back, right? I think we see him throw the sleep out as well, right? So some cooldown usage of this map, you know, very, very poor from Shu. I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were looking at Shu's POV though, so I don't want to dwell on it too long. But it's kind of the reason why we don't see anyone in a position to either hit the Sombra, and again, skewed, maybe a little bit late on the reaction to boop the Sombra, cancel the, cancel the hack, right? And again, maybe Kevster, it's nice for him to push forward and duel, but then once he starts backing up, I think it's better if he's making sure he's keeping an eye out for the Sombra, right? So we have responsibility from the backline. The Ana, the Echo, and the Brig has to be watching out for Sombra coming up on this angle, right? Again, these players probably saw it, but Skewed's maybe a little bit late with the whip shot, but mostly because Shu didn't have his cooldowns, he wasn't in a position to either nade the Sombra, cancel the hack, and he's also not in a position to save space now, right? And Kevster, obviously because he wasn't really looking on the right side, because he just kind of lost that little skirmish with Shockwave, wasn't in a position to shoot the Sombra either, right? If we got this nade onto space in time, then we stabilize here, we build the nano, and we're still happy, right? It's still a fine situation, right? It's mostly because we saw Shu not save his cooldowns for that critical moment when both monkeys are walking forward with the bubbles, right? Again, in this type of comp, we're looking at kind of all these heroes. Sombra, Echo, you know, both very cooldown reliant with the hacks, with coming out stealth, with flying, you know, with the right clicks, right? Monkey especially with the bubble, that's like the main cooldown for the comp. But also Ana with the nades, with the sleeps, right? These 4 heroes especially, obviously Matrix is part of it too, but it's not really a cooldown, right? These cooldowns that these kind of 4 players have, very critical. We need them all coming out at the same time, right? Because we saw Shu use his cooldowns during downtime, he didn't have them for the next uptime cycle, which is the reason why we saw Gladiators kind of really kind of lose that cycle, yeah? Really lose that little battle of uptimes between the 2 monkey comps, yeah? We'll talk briefly about the way that Fusion's backline are playing, because again, we're talking mostly about Gladiators, like this kind of the whole VOD, we're talking mostly about Gladiators, but the backline, Funny Astro, Alarm, Hopper, doing a fantastic job, right? Let's have a look at this fight here, and again, it is a little bit different, because we have Rally, we have Nano, right? We have Rally and we have Nano, so keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that because they just kept first point, we're not seeing the monkey player close position, right? Our Echo's also a little bit further back too. And then we also don't have a tracer, so we don't have as many people kind of trading on the backline. So it is a slightly different situation, yeah? But I want us to focus on the way that the backline, Funny Astro, Alarm, Hopper, look at the way that they're peeling for each other when the monkey dive comes in. You know, Alarm's coming up in main. We see the early rally to make sure that if a dive comes in at this point, chances are we can stabilize because we have that overheal, right? We're then seeing a nano onto the monkey, and as soon as the enemy monkey comes in, right? What are we seeing? We're seeing the whole team back up. Again, Alarm is backing up this way. Funny Astro immediately walking backwards. And what's called Hopper immediately coming in to peel. Yeah. I think the primal comes off, and we don't really care too much, right? Because the whole team is backing all the way to peel for him. Yeah. In the meantime, Mano understands his only job was diving deep and zoning out the backline. So these players, Shu, Skewed, fully zoned out. They're not doing anything. Once Mano's done that, they're very happy. And he understands that the rest of the team, their job is then going to be clearing the space here. Yeah. Again, very, very happy with that. Yeah. And that's what they do. They kind of go back to point, get the hack on the monkey. Is this shockwave down here? I think so. Yeah. But we'll watch it just quickly from overhead after. But just so we can have a feel for the tempo. Do we peel for shockwave? No, he's dead. That's fine. But yeah, so if we look at this just from overhead quickly, we're kind of looking at the tempo of the fight in terms of the dives, in terms of the peeling from the backline. Yeah. Again, looking at this here, we see the backline, right? Come up to the choke. We see the commitment of the nano, right? We see Mano go deep, zone out the enemy backline, right? No healing for gladiators because Shu and Skewed are forced back into spawn, right? And again, when we have copy as well, just briefly, when we have copy, the Echo will commit like this. She will try and push through. If she has a chance, maybe she's super close to the enemy team. Let's say she found a way to hide here in pre-fight, then she would go onto the backline, right? If she had copy, she'd also go onto the backline, right? So those are the situations that she kind of dives with the monkey. If she's got copy and if she's kind of found a really strong position in pre-fight, right? But if she doesn't have copy, doesn't have that position, then we would see her playing further back and we would instead see her in this area, focusing the monkey, focusing the sombra, yeah? But because he has copy, that's why he kind of has the freedom to commit a little bit deeper. Does he need to? I think it's fine. I would almost prefer him to be playing back and playing counter, like playing to clear these players quicker, but it doesn't really matter too much, right? Like both situations he's going to get value. But that's kind of when you see Echoes trying to decide, like, do you trade on the enemy backline or do you peel? Do you have copy? Then yes, you can go in. Have you found a position kind of close to the enemy team, like funky position where you can get a good dive with the monkey, despite the fact you don't have copy, right? That's also when you would go in, yeah? But if you don't have either of those things, we'd instead see Shockwave further back, just kind of peeling to the team. But again, the main thing I want to focus on here is the way that the backline peel for each other, the way that Fusion force the enemy backline into spawn, and then use that time that the enemy backline has spent in spawn to clear the space behind them. We've already seen them catch Muse. We've already seen them kick Kevster out of copy. Now we've just seen them kill Kevster, right? Now the rest of Gladiators are kind of forced right back to point, not really in a position to win the fight from here, yeah? So, very, very different situation to what we saw from Gladiators on the attack, yeah? Where we saw Shu just kind of run straight through main and throw his cooldowns right on the enemy backline, right? So very, very different situation from those two teams. They lack the ability to finish fights in a lot of situations, yeah? They kind of, they do really well at the start, and then they just kind of like, I don't think they have the patience. I don't think their like attitude within the team has given them that patience to play the default. That's what I think their issue is. We see Gladiators swap out of spawn. Obviously Fusion drop in response to that. Gladiators comp, very, very effective comp, yeah? Because, again, when we're looking at these double shield comps, we're not thinking about what they do in terms of damage, right? We're not thinking, oh, you know, this team does X amount of damage. John, let's fucking go into practice range and like add up the range DPS of every hero on the team, compare them to each other. Whichever team has more damage, that's the one that's going to win the double shield matchup, right? That's obviously not how double shield works, yeah? What we're thinking instead is that because shields have been nerfed so much, again, it was quite a while ago, but shields got nerfed a lot, it's now very, very quick to break shields, especially when you're playing on the attack, right? This Orisa shield here, this Sig shield, they go down super, super quick, right? What that means is when we're talking about this comp, we're thinking more about what they do after the enemy team, after you've broken the enemy team's shields, right? You don't need a huge amount of shield break. You kind of hit the minimum threshold for being able to break the enemy shields. You hit that pretty quick, and you've hit that with like these 3 heroes here, right? Well, sorry, these 4 heroes here. You kind of hit that already. The way we're going to see Gladiators play is we're going to see them break the shields quick. Then in response, we're going to see Fusion have to kind of hide in cover, you know, hide in this area here because they have no shields. Then we're thinking, what do Gladiators do once the enemy team hides? Well, they have a Sig that can flank with the support of the Zen. We have the Tracer that can like fully push the flank with the support of the Zen, right? We have the Orisa that can push up on the corner. That's the type of stuff we're looking for, right? We're looking to see the way that they take more angles after they force the enemy to hide, right? And that's the way that we see double shield comps playing on the attack, yeah? We break the enemy shields, force the enemy team to hide. Once the enemy team are hiding, we start slowly taking angles, right? So like we start with this space here. Maybe we make the enemy team hide here and they have to kind of run back, right? That's when we'd start kind of taking this area here once they start to hide. Once they start running back to point, we can then take this bit up top. Once they kind of get on point, maybe we break their shields again here, force them into this area. Once they're hiding over here, then we can start kind of taking point. We start pushing this right side here, using our LOS up here, help our Tracer push this area, then take up behind. We see how we kind of break the map up into all these little bits, right? And every time we're committing and taking a new area of the map, a lot of the time it's going to happen just after we've broken the enemy shields and forced them to hide, right? So when we're evaluating what double shield comps can do, that's usually what we're looking at, right? We're looking at what do they do in terms of the shield break after they make the enemy team hide, right? Again, that's not the only way we look at them, but that's one of the good ways of looking at them when they're attacking, yeah? So obviously, Gladiators have a very strong comp for the situation, and again, I'm not going to talk about this fight too much. I'm mostly just going to focus on the way that they're playing for the flanks. They're breaking the shields, forcing the enemy team back. Using their LOS, again, we're looking at how quickly we're healing Kevster on the flank. The critical player in this comp right now isn't the Orisa touching point, isn't the Sig down here, it's the Tracer, yeah? Because she's the one that's going to get this flank, clear this angle. If she can clear this sombra, then these players here are confident kind of splitting up, spreading out, yeah? And if our backline's confident splitting up, again, we don't really want these players all peeking the same angle. So what do? We put our Tracer on the flank to make a bit of space, so our handler's confident kind of jumping across, playing a different angle, right? That's what we're looking for, which means we got to have our heals very, very prompt, very, very quick onto our Tracer when she's skirmishing for map control, right? Right now it's the Tracer. In a minute we're going to see it's actually the Sig and the Hanzo doing the same thing, right? Obviously Fusion can go for this little push out of Hotel. They need to go for this type of thing. Unfortunately, Shockwave's already kind of gone this way. They don't have Shockwave with them. It would have been kind of maybe a little bit better if Shockwave was with them, maybe try to split out this way. Also would have been better if EQO was still in this area somewhere to try and get an off angle as they come out. As it stands, there's not really a whole lot you can do here, right? You need to go for this type of push, yes, but your DPS, neither of them are in a position to get a good angle on this. You are constrained a little bit by your comp, but mostly you needed your DPS to get in a position. I'm not going to go back and talk about what positions they should have taken, though. I want to focus mostly on Gladiators, yeah? Because what do we see after? We see the Tracers taking a bit of space. We see the Hanzo, yeah? We see him use that space, right? He's not standing in the back with the team. He's using the space, getting an aggressive angle, right? He sees the Ashe over here, starts shooting the Ashe, right? He can play in this little kind of corridor here, shoot onto the angle, shoot onto the enemy team from this way, right? At the same time, we also see the Sig taking an angle, and this one's pretty critical, yeah? Because the Sig starts to take the angle, he's pressuring the team from the flank, at the same time as his team's touching point. But the way that Space is doing this, he's doing it in a place that the enemy team can't catch him, yeah? Because he knows the enemy team have just used a bunch of cooldowns when they pushed out this way, which means that he knows he has this little window of time, it's only kind of 4 or 5 seconds, right? Probably not even that much, it's probably only like a little 2 or 3 second window in which he can walk up and start fighting the enemy team. Because he does this now, and he doesn't kind of wait here for 2 minutes forcing point, it means that EQO isn't on an angle when Space goes for this, right? If Space hesitated and was standing here, then maybe EQO's come out, and EQO's actually in this position over here, which means that when Fusion push out of the room onto Space, they have an angle, right? So that's what we want to be looking at here. We want to be looking at kind of how quickly they're taking control of these angles, how much they're committing to doing it, right? We see the Tracer go up. Again, we see Shu healing this Tracer across the map, very critical, yeah? Again, we are breaking the shield super, super quick. As soon as that wrist shield comes out, it's broken. Heals onto Tracer super quick, right? Enemy team come out, try and push, use their cooldowns for it, right? Because they have no cooldowns, we see Space immediately pushing to push advantage, right? Take the advantage, yeah? Because he knows the enemy team aren't in a position to punish him. Because he doesn't hesitate as well, it also means that the Sombra isn't set up. Which means that when they try and push out onto him here, they can't catch him because they have no off angle and they also have no cooldowns, right? Because again, Space has just seen them use those cooldowns to try and get those kills in this area, right? The other thing as well, when we talk about the backline, we're looking at how quickly We're seeing the heals from Shu and Skewed get onto the flankers, right? We saw as well Shu just focus the enemy Sombra as soon as she popped up. We can also help our team take the flanks by doing our own DPS, yeah, very important. Our supports have a massive responsibility to clear flanks using DPS where they can. We see Birdring a little bit tagged in the window. Again, we see very quick healing from our supports onto Birdring. Very quick healing as well onto our Tracer, since our Tracer takes pressure, right? So you see the way we're not just focusing on the Orisa, we're not standing at the back trying to spam. As soon as the enemy team are forced into cover, we're then very, very aggressively taking space, right? And again, I know that's kind of a really simple term. We don't like to just say taking space, but it's not just taking space, it's taking an angle, right? Our Tracer takes this angle here, clears the Sombra. Our Hanzo takes this angle here, forces the Ashe down, right? Our Hanzo's like standing here, shooting them from here. Our Sig comes up this way, shoots in this way, right? You see the way we're taking angles as soon as the enemy team are forced to hide, right? And in terms of the supports, their mindset isn't to kind of just help the Orisa stick with the Orisa start touching point. It's to instantly provide support to their teammates when they're fighting for the flanks. They're providing support, yes, by healing, but also by doing DPS, by forcing out Sombras when they come up, by breaking like a Sig shield, for example, when the Sig was trying to push space, right? That's what we're seeing from the supports. That's the mindset that we have, right? So very, very critical to understand that. It's all about the angles, yeah?